大家好，感谢大家今天的莅临。好，那我们这场 session 其实最主要我们会先就艾顿资科所代理的一个产品叫 Intezer， 那谈论到有关怎么样利用 agentic AI 来协助大家在日常上面的治安维运所遇到的一些痛点跟挑战，怎么样让它自动化、快速、有优于其他这个产品在这个调查的深度上面Intezer 有独到的技术。那我今天特别邀请了这个 Intezer 从以色列飞来，就是他是在 Intezer 这边的技术总监小武，那来分享一下他的这个经验。OK， 鼓励大家多听一下。
Our session today. My name is Shaul Holtzman. As Rick said, I come from Israel, work at Intezer. And again, I really appreciate your time and our partners at AIShield for hosting me and inviting me to the conference. I work as the Director of Solution Engineering at Intezer and have been at the company for the past 7 years. And I will be very happy to present to you today what Intezer does in automating security operations and SOC and helping organizations around the world and also here in Taiwan to automate their security processes and identify critical threats faster and reducing a lot of the noise that they are getting from their detection platforms. So I'm going to show you a few slides and a live demo of the product. And let's see if this works. Great. So starting with the problem that I think everyone here is familiar with, of course, security is always changing and attacks become more sophisticated and common. Now, with that, we have more detection solutions in all of our organizations, and that, of course, makes more alerts and triggers more detections than ever. Then the challenge is how to focus on the critical threats in real time in order to prevent the actual infections and breaches into the organization when we have so much information coming in. Of course, this also makes the job of the analysts more complicated, requiring more skills and more time and more people. And that, unfortunately, is very difficult, to scale up security teams, and this is where we come in. Specifically, the problem is in the investigation stage. Today, it's easier than ever to create detection platforms and generate detections, as I mentioned. That is the problems or part of the problem. In addition, the response part is also easier than ever with very flexible solutions that support API and automation, including using SOAR for automating the response to different attacks. But the critical part here is how do you get from A to C, right? How do we know when we need to properly respond faster, right, to the real attacks? That requires the investigation. And the investigation today is not automated. Many organizations, of course, are trying to automate the investigation part of incidents and alerts, but that is very difficult. You need to mimic and replicate investigation processes that require a lot of experience and knowledge and deep investigation. So that is what we are focusing on with our solution. So how do you replicate the investigation process? So first, we need to understand what the investigation process includes, right? So when you have a SOC analyst, let's say they have all the time in the world and all the skills necessary to investigate every single alert. What would they do in order to get to the right answer? Is this alert true, positive, critical, requiring immediate response? Or is this another false positive? So first, they will receive the alert from the detection source that can be their SIEM, their EDR, firewall, anything like that. When they get the alert, they will start with reviewing the available evidence. Okay, I might have an IP address, maybe a file, maybe a script or a command line. I will need, as an analyst, to extract all of those pieces of evidence and then move on to the analysis of each piece of evidence. As an analyst, I probably have different tools at my disposal. Some might be open source, depending on the budget that I have, and I will investigate each and every single artifact. Then I will take all of those pieces of investigation and artifacts and make a decision based on the context and the verdicts that I've reached. Based on that decision, I will be able to say this is true positive, false positive, and what needs to be my response to this individual case. This would be the flow that will need to be replicated automatically. That extraction of evidence, the analysis of the evidence, and the decision making that happens after that process. And this is exactly what Intezer is doing. In about 1 or 2 minutes for every single alert, we connect directly to the alert source. So the alert doesn't come directly to the analyst, it first comes to Intezer, where we extract all of the available evidence automatically and send each one to the dedicated engine that will analyze that piece of evidence in the best way. Taking all of that into account, we can decide based on the context and the result whether this is true positive, false positive, and what needs to be the response. Then the security team, the analysts, will receive the alert only after this process happened, and on average we see around 4% across all of our customers of alerts that are escalated. So 96% are not urgent. Mostly there are false positives. Some we might want to follow up later, but only that small 4% requires immediate response by the team.
好，大家这个简报我大概 highlight 几个重点哦。这是在我们台湾现在看到的状况，就是大部分治安团队如果自己公司里面有，就是像左边这边，所有的告警就直接进到治安团队，收到通报，然后就马上去做调查。这调查可能是 EDR 团队，可能是 IT 团队，可能网络团队、系统团队，各个你都要去协助他的打。所以这个东西基本上如果是误判的话，会搞得大家一团乱，花很多时间做白工。所以呢，这些动作是少不了的。那如果这个东西是往外部的厂商、SOC 业者、MDR 业者往他们送，他来去做调查，到底他有没有每一笔告警都调查？你不知道，他的规则怎么写，你不知道，所以他到底他看了什么东西，你也不知道。最后你知道的结果就是，他通报你之后，你还是得调查，你还是得调查，你还这个工作还是得继续做掉。前面那些工作你并没有少，你只是他透过他帮你写的规则，收敛了这些告警的数量。但是我们看到的状况是，现在很多中低风险的告警事件，其实才是猫腻。但这个可能在它的过滤条件直接把它 filter 掉了，这第一个。第二个，他通报你可能是2天之后，通报你只能是2天之后，而且只是告诉你说疑似什么问题，不确定入口是在哪里。这时候你还是搞一团乱。所以右边我们的逻辑是完全颠倒不一样，已经完成了调查之后，通报你，告诉你真正的问题在哪里，你接下来要采取什么样的措施。该去隔离，该去删除档案，该去卸载什么样的 process。OK， 机码被修改了，被新增了，这些东西很明确的告诉你，你直接可以做 action。而这个调查是可以做到每一笔都做调查，而且它的精准度非常高，而且只花的时间平均我们平均2分21秒，就完成每一笔告警事件的细部的精准的调查，然后可以马上如果有需要通报你，大概比例就像刚刚小武讲的。只有4%，也就是100个告警里面，大概就有4% 需要做 action。所以你就想想看哦，我们大家老实讲 ，AI 是公平的。我常在跟客户讲 以前你可能要有一个专家团队，你要花一笔钱hire这样的团队进来到你的公司里面来。OK， 这笔钱到底能够组多少的人力团队来做这件事情，不知道。但是呢，我花了很多钱去委外，但得到效果，我相信大家这么多年下来之后，它效果是很有限的。所以呢，我们希望把这样的概念带给大家，就是调查这件事情一定得做，因为就像刚刚提到的，到底是 false positive 还是 true positive， 你是必须要先确认，你才可以 make decision。你如果没有做，直接从 EDR 的 detection 跳到 response， 因为 EDR 只做 detection 跟 response， 中间 investigation 没有做，所以它才叫 EDR。OK， 那这个东西基本上这个概念，我们已经是可以完成做得非常的精准的。OK。
Thank you, Rick. So how does this work? How do we do it? Of course, it sounds wonderful, right? So high-level architecture, we connect, as mentioned, to different alert sources. Those could be endpoint detection, EDR. It could be phishing related, so anything related to the email analysis. Identity alerts, so someone logged in from here, then from here. How do we know? Is that legitimate? Network detection, cloud, and of course SIEM, anything that comes through the SIEM. We receive the alerts, go through the analysis, and as mentioned, escalate the critical cases. Then those alerts will be sent to the case management, ticketing system, or we can also trigger automatic response. Now again, this is very high level. Going a bit deeper, first, some customers of ours around the world that are today using the solution. And how do we do it specifically? So we are, of course, leveraging AI. That is what everyone is doing today. But AI is only as good as the tools and the data it has at its disposal. So I can't today just take an alert, throw it in ChatGPT, and get a good result, right? We have to go deeper. So Intezer has developed over the years very complex and dedicated analysis engines that can deeply investigate different types of artifacts. And I will show you what that means in a moment. When you give that power to AI agents, they can make very informed and good decisions. So we've divided the process to different AI agents that use the context from the alert and the investigation power that we can provide from our engines and integrations. So we have different collection tools, analysis and response tools. We have evidence collection agents, analysis, correlation, response, and remediation. So we utilize AI at every step with the analysis context that we have from our proprietary engines and analysis tools that are, of course, provided out of the box with the solution there. So just to summarize, as mentioned, we provide automatic SOC analysis for any incoming alert, only escalating a very small part of those detections for immediate response. We have an extremely high accuracy rate and, of course, very quick triage time. Using this technology, you don't need to wait hours until you get a response. It takes about 2 minutes on average for all alerts. Now, I want to show you a quick demo of the product, so I will just move to the system here. And what you will see here are real examples from real environments, of course with no private information, of how the solution works and what it does. So starting here with the main dashboard of the system, this is what you see when you come in. What is the current status of your environment? So we can see at the top the number of ingested alerts over the past month, the number of hosts in the environment, and of course the investigation time. For this customer, only around a minute on average per alert investigation. This is extremely fast. In addition, you can see the escalation rate. So from all of those detections that they got over that past month, only about 2% required immediate attention. Those were escalated for immediate response, while everything else becomes deprioritized. either no action needed at all, you can see here over 70%, nothing is needed, and an additional 25%, you can follow up when you have the time. This is not urgent. You need to focus on the 2%. In addition, you can see further breakdown and where we are currently connected. This particular customer is heavy on the Microsoft side, so they have different Microsoft detection sources. And connecting, onboarding is very simple. You can simply provide our solution with the API key and permissions that we need in order to connect, for example, here to CrowdStrike, and you can begin immediately. Below, you can also get some more threat intelligence information that you can use for hunting and tuning based on our investigation. So which artifacts were triggering true positive or false positive alerts, what users or devices are currently at risk. So this is coming from our investigation, and we've talked about this investigation a lot, so let's see some real examples. So this is the alert page. This is where you can see what was detected and what was the investigation that Intezer conducted. So you can see on the right, this comes from Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, and the risk level provided by Microsoft is medium to this alert. This means that if it comes with all of those thousands of alerts, this will not be prioritized by the security team for investigation. We don't care about the priority. We investigate everything in the same way, whether it's informational, medium, high, or critical. And you can see we did that here. And our decision was to escalate this as a critical threat. How did we make that decision or jump from medium to critical? So this is exactly the process that I described in the slides. We extracted the evidence. Here, that includes some files, network artifacts, memory scans, and process information. So exactly like the analyst would do, if they had all the time and all the skill necessary for every single alert, we went through the evidence, and we see here the parent process. We see here a process command line, and from here, we are using AI to make a decision about this command line. This is malicious. We also find an additional network artifact inside the command line, and we analyze that as well. Both are found to be malicious. But the most important part in this case, we also deploy our own memory scanner on the host. So this is the equivalent of full memory forensics for that machine. Let's see if my Wi-Fi will work here. Yes. And we actually find in real time an active infection on the host. So you can see how deeply we go, that we can say within minutes that there is an infected process that was injected with malware on that machine. Again, a medium severity alert that we are able to find in an active infection. A very similar example here comes from CrowdStrike. So this is not something that is specific to any detection source. Any detection platform will generate detections, and it's very difficult for them to give the right priority. They need to detect first and foremost. We investigate. So this is a very similar case, medium severity coming from CrowdStrike. We extracted the evidence and also found a live infection, this time redline stealer, on the host. And based on these investigations, we are able to escalate the case immediately for the team. Then they can respond very quickly. This becomes the top priority. A few other examples. This is the other side of this coin, okay? We have a high severity detection from the EDR. We extract the evidence in the same exact way, and we find a legitimate file, legitimate command line, legitimate network artifact, and this alert can be closed immediately as a false positive and does not need to even reach the security team. They don't need to do anything with it. And as you saw, this will be around 70% of all alerts. And again, this also is not something specific to Defender. This happens in CrowdStrike, in Sentinel-1, in Palo Alto Cortex. It's part of what they do. It makes sense. They provide excellent detection. We will provide that excellent investigation.
这边做一个 summary 啊，因为刚刚小武谈了3个 case， 这3个 case 里面有2个是从 EDR 侦测到的中风险，但它经过Intezer 的独立调查。其实我喜欢用一个医疗的照会，就是说我们如果有身体有不舒服，可以照会各个各科的医师来去给不同的意见。刚刚他就在做这件事情。 他做了机体鉴识，他做了档案的分析、行为的分析、网度的分析，所有的脚本 process 的分析，全部都做了。他从不同的观点去做完调查之后，他的判决跟原来 EDR 是截然不同的。原来 EDR 是 medium 中风险，但是他经过这些照会的调查完之后，变成这高风险，而且立即的做通报，把所有的证据都呈现在治安团队前面。 告诉你说问题在哪里。那同样的状况，他第3个 case 谈的是 false positive。OK， 所有的 EDR 都认为这是高风险，应该做阻挡。但是经过他调查完之后，他认为这些都是合法的程序行为，所以你不应该去做阻挡。所以像这样的一个状况，其实你直接可以把这个 ticket 做个关闭的，你不需要把这个 ticket 再送到治安团队去，造成告警疲劳。 OK， 那这个动作就变成说 ，EDR 有 EDR 的调查 ，Intezer 有 Intezer 的调查，2个是独立的哦。所以呢，回过头来，大家等同是你的身边有一个治安专家，他可以做到我们讲 MRI、CT 的这种层级的调查。那我们用治安的逻辑来看，就是我可以做到每笔告警都用逆向工程、机体鉴识的逻辑去针对可行。 可能的状况做全面的调查之后，再来做判断。所以呢，回过头来，我们就比较不用担心会漏报。所以的，对于你的每天的 daily operation 来讲，你看到这些结果之后，你会比较放心，因为我刚刚提到的，你把这些告警丢给 MDR 团队，丢给外部的 SOC 团队，他到底怎么做的调查，你看不到。但是刚刚的画面就很清楚的把这些东西很 transparent 透明的告诉你。 所以你可以知道每一笔告警是怎么样处理的，怎么调查的 ，OK， 那你就可以很轻松的去执行你每天的治安任务 ，OK。
And just a few last examples. So EDR is just one source of detection, of course, and we support any alert detection on any security event. This example comes from Microsoft, and we are able to ingest these alerts either through Microsoft XDR or any SIEM solution that is being used by our customers. And this alert is of an identity kind, so anything related to suspicious logins, authentication, and based on this type of alert, again, we replicate what the analyst would do. We extract the relevant evidence in this context. So here we have an impossible travel detection. A user logged in one country or in one location, and then another in a very short period of time. So we are able to extract the source IP addresses of these authentication events and classify them. Those IPs are legitimate IPs based on our dedicated analysis. Of course, on the other end, they might have been related to any malicious activity where we would, of course, treat them accordingly. In addition to these legitimate IPs, we are also able to connect back to the identity provider that triggered these alerts and ask them, what was the history of this particular user? Does it make sense in the context of this detection? So we can get from Microsoft Entra ID the history of this user and where they logged in the past. Have they logged in these IPs before? Was it successful? Were they using multi-factor authentication, etc., etc.? Since we have here logs, text-based evidence, we are able to apply LLM or generative AI to analyze them as well and make a decision on this piece of evidence. As you saw also that we do for command lines, scripts, and other text-based evidence. So taking all of this into account, we are able to make a decision and say that this high severity alert that was triggered is also a false positive. Another thing that can happen in identity-related cases is validating the activity with the user. You know that when you log in from a new device to Google, for example, you get a message, was this you? So we can also send that message, we can send it through Teams or Slack or any communication method, and the user can tell us if they recognize or don't recognize that activity, and of course it will affect the result calculation. And last example here is firewall detection. So anything related to network also triggers a lot of noise for our customers, sometimes tens of thousands of alerts in a week. And we can see here another high severity detection. This comes from Palo Alto firewall. And again, we go through the process, we extract the evidence. Here we're talking about network artifacts, IPs, domains, URLs. We have dedicated analysis classifying them as legitimate. In addition, for any analysis and any alert that you see here, in addition to the result that you get, you can also dive into any artifact analysis using our engines as part of the investigation and the response. So these were a few examples of Intezer's automatic triage. Again, we replicate what the tier 1 analyst would do and only escalate the critical cases so that the organization can handle the large number of alerts that are coming in and focus on the critical cases and keeping that security. Thank you very much for your time.
这边再多提了一个 identity 跟SIEM 这一块有关 firewall 的一个案例。那 identity 这件事情，其实我们在现在很多的银行啦，这些客户那边，他每天可能要看 identity 的 log 太多了，看不完。怎么样去 confirm 到底这个 user 是从哪里 login 进来，这是不是他？这件事情一样也可以自动化。OK， 特别是在 COVID 之后 ，work from home，我的边界没了，随时随地都可以透过 VPN 进来。OK， 这是一个大的问题。然后当然 SIEM 这一块，怎么样很快速的把 SIEM 所收拢到的这些告警，也透过这种自动化的方式去做一些验证，然后确认问题的根源在哪里，这些都是可以完全的自动化，而且是可行的。那所以呢，最大的重点在于是我们可以支援 EDR 可以支援4个品牌，也就是说在你的环境里面，你不用受限于单一个品牌，你也许在 server 方用 CloudStrike， 在 OA 用 MDE， 你可以有多个品牌的交错使用，我们都能够用一样的标准来去做调查、分析跟通报。那当然也可以整合多家的 SIEM 平台。所以我想这个就是我们希望能够提供一个 Unified Platform 来协助大家在每天的治安运营上面能够更有效率的。那你越快的能够去 detect 到这些事情去做 action， 也就代表骇客越难攻破你，那他绝对会转头去攻击下一个没有能力发现他问题的那个企业。所以我们不要当最后末段班，不要当末段班，你就可以安然度过每一天。OK， 也不用加班。好，那谢谢大家今天的这个时间。